Hello there, and welcome to part 4 of the Introduction to Magical Games. Devi Baba here. It's been a while, but I'm back like Voldemort, minus the Voldemort haircut, which we'll have to wait till December for reasons we'll get into. Or maybe we won't, I don't know. Today is about finite and infinite games, and this cool little book which is quite an adventure of the mind. I highly recommend it. It's not as easy of a read as one might suspect. It basically goes like this. There are two types of games. Well, there are at least two types of games. Finite games and infinite games. Finite games are played with known players, boundaries, objectives, and rules. Most importantly, they have a victory condition. There's a point at which the game ends because a winner is being declared. In fact, the point of finite games is to end play so that a winner can be determined. Then you've got infinite games. And the infinite game can be described as being well, it's very different than finite games. You've got players that are known and unknown, and enter and leave the game at various points. You have boundaries that change, rules that change. Most importantly, there is no victory condition. There is no point at which the game is declared over because somebody's reached some kind of predetermined victory condition. So the point of the infinite game, is to continue play. And so to continue play, you need to constantly be refreshing boundaries and rules and things like that. But that doesn't mean that an infinite game is without a direction or some basic objective. So examples of finite games are pretty much all of the things we think of as games. Any sport where there is a winner, if you take a game of baseball or football, anyone's versions of football, it's got a victory condition. The board game Monopoly has a victory condition, and that's the point. The point is to end play by being declared the winner. The other kind, the infinite game, is kind of harder to get a grasp on in terms of examples. But Simon Sinek, in his book The Infinite Game, which is sort of a spin, well, it is a spin on this concept, applying this idea to business, does a really good job of pointing some out, like geopolitics. When do you win at geopolitics? Or, I don't know if he uses this example, but medicine. When are you done with medicine? When are you victorious? When do you finally declare victory? In the blog over at the website, I get into the idea of the search for knowledge, the search for truth. It's something we often treat like a finite game, but is it really a finite game? How would you declare victory? How do you know when you've won? When you've discovered the last truth or an indisputable truth, how do you know it? Anyway, I get into all that stuff over there. We don't need to do that today. This is just an introduction to these things for the purpose of how they relate to magical games. So the magical game, or the magical game operating system, could be described as an interface for interacting with the infinite game of using magic, of magic-ing, if you will. We won't. That kind of idea of to always be advancing towards being in your individual case, my individual case, towards being a better magic user, towards being stronger in the ways, again, I get into on the blog, the whole Nietzsche idea of the will to power and how that can be employed in a non-psychotic kind of manner. I get into all that over there, but here we are. And the author, James Carse, he mentions there are at least two types of games, finite and infinite games. I'm going to talk about a third game which kind of wiggles between the definitions because it's not really like you're playing it to end the game, but it's actually good for illustrating something else, which is finite games included in an infinite game. So if you've got the, before I go on to that other example, if you've got the game of medicine, there are finite games within that. There are, you maybe finding a way to effectively and conclusively treat a type of cancer. That could be considered a finite game. That's within the bigger game of medicine, the infinite game of that. So what about, though, role-playing games? What about a game like, I'm just going to say, Dungeons and Dragons and games like it? What about those? They're not really played for the purpose of ending the game, of stopping to play that character or whatever. There's this advancement that's going on for at least a long time, and there may be a point at which the characters become so powerful that it's just not fun anymore. In that instance, we would say that the player has lost the willingness to play. And basically there are two ways of exiting the infinite game. And one of them is to lose the willingness to play, and one of which is to lose the resources to play, which might be the case, say, in the international game of geopolitics. You may run out of the resources to be able to compete geopolitically, and so on and so forth. So these kinds of ideas are being kicked around because I want to share this idea that the magical game, as I'm approaching it, is the operating system is a way of interfacing with magic to play it as an infinite game that you're always moving towards leveling up. This system could be described as a system of dice building and deck building and resource allocation and even badge collecting to some extent. Really to the extent that those things are motivating towards moving you forward in your actual world outside of the game interface. So I hope that this has been an interesting little topic. We're going to be getting more and more into the actual quote-unquote nuts and bolts of this stuff. The more I can skip over these kinds of philosophical issues for the time being, I will, just to get us started at playing with some of these things. So going forward, we are going to need to talk about some basics around organizational systems. This guy, David Allen, and the Getting Things Done world, we're going to talk about 43 folders and how it relates to the game calendar. And then I guess move forward towards getting you started, or at least getting an explanation started for how this thing unfolds in a day-to-day kind of way. So I hope you all are doing well out there, playing and exploring some exciting magic and other things often not described as magic. Wishing you all the best and looking forward to causing a ruckus with you all. Be seeing you.